Welcome to the Builders Podcast, episode 139. Jonathan Green, leveraging AI for business success and entrepreneurial insights. Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable from the trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today we are joined by Jonathan Green. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Jonathan is an AI guy and a ChatGPT guru, I think. You know, he helps people, teaches them how to implement these things or use them or embrace them in their businesses, their lives, their careers, whatever. It's going to be a really interesting conversation because being in the tech space myself, I'm immersed. I'm bombarded with AI-related tools and new features and all this stuff going on. I use in my business every day. So I'm very excited about this conversation. But as we always do on The Builders, anytime we have somebody on for the first time, we like to learn a little bit about them, their origin story, what made them into the awesome person they are today, and what that journey looked like, becoming an entrepreneur. So with that, Jonathan, I am going to hand it over to you to tell your story and let's dig into it.
Sure. My story starts in February of 2010 when I was fired from my dream job. I had reached the peak of my career, was running a $1.5 million project and really at a top 20 university, and thought, this is the end. There's no more promotions for me until my boss dies. That's it. So she didn't look close to death. So I was like, she might be around for the 30 or 40 years, but that was it. And they fired me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes we have these traumatic moments where we think it's such a bad thing. Oh my gosh, I lost my dream job. But in fact, they freed me to find what I was really meant to be. Because often we're dependent on like this okay job or this okay thing that stops us from pursuing the thing we're meant to be doing because there's like a risk. Like I don't want to risk losing this job to get my dream job, my real dream job, things like that. So it forced me out of the nest. And that really began my journey where I said, I never want someone to have this much power over me again, because when someone can fire you, if you have a single revenue stream, whether you have a single client or a single job or whatever, all of your money comes from one place, that place can turn off the spigot, and it doesn't have to be your fault. Like how many people in 2008 who worked at Bear Stearns weren't involved in cooking the books, right?
Yeah. And
they all lost their jobs, and all these other companies collapsed, and all these banks have collapsed over the last few years. Very rarely is it the teller's fault that the bank mismanaged their investments, right? But you still lose your job. Or sometimes a company goes, hey, we're firing 10%, 20%, 30% of the workforce. And they're like, and you go, are you firing the worst 30% of the bottom 30% of performers? No, just 30% for each department. So you don't even have to be you don't even have to be bad. So
right.
When you're like 18 and you get fired, it's your fault. Like when I got lost jobs when I was in my early 20s, of course, it's like you don't show up or you backtalk your boss, like you do that stuff. Once you're late 20s or 30s, usually it's not your fault. Majority of the time, it's stuff like that. Like they don't even call it a firing anymore, right? Like it feels really good. I'm glad you called it downsizing, because even though I can't afford to feed my family, if you said you'd fired me, my feelings would be like super hurt. So I learned that lesson, forged that moment. I said, I don't want someone to have the power to affect my ability to feed my kids, pay my rent, cover my medical bills, all the things that we have to do to live. That really pushed me out. And from there, I just began experimenting. For most people, the best places to start in the services industry, I was selling search engine optimization, just posting ads on Craigslist. I got my first client within 4 days. And I took that check and I bought a course on SEO. I was like, now I got to learn how to do it. And that's really how it all began for me, was that force, that desire to never give someone else power over me again.
Oh, yes. Oh man, I can relate to that. Having worked for myself for most of my adult life, I've worked for myself, although I've had jobs in between. Well, probably more jobs in my 20s. But when you said, like, the fact that sometimes when bad things happen to you, it's, really it's it's the best thing that could happen to you. And I just remember, we won't mention the company, but you could probably figure it out if you went to my LinkedIn or something. But I worked for a company for 4 years, and I was so excited to be there. I was like building my dream. I'm a WordPress nerd. We're doing WordPress stuff. We're building stuff. We're building a marketplace. We're selling themes. And then they got out of the WordPress business. and
Yeah.
that their company went in a different direction. But like you said, though, I mean, you can't blame them. That's business. We're in business now. We understand, right? And things happen, and they just make decisions. But your life was in their hands. Now, I had so much invested mentally and my time and my passion into this thing that just blinked out. And but it gave me an opportunity. The next thing I did is build an agency, and I'm super thankful that that happened to me. So it's powerful.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing to think that, like, if that hadn't happened, you would have stayed with them doing WordPress forever. Your life would have gone this different trajectory. That would have been like good, but not great.
Yeah.
So sometimes we need that shake up that seems so terrible, but it forces us to have to like unlock our dreams.
Yeah. And then you're in a place where now, what you alluded to as well, now you have control over your destiny a little bit more, right?
Exactly. Like there's the danger of being comfortable is that you don't want to give it up because
Yeah.
then you'll like accept, oh, my job is like a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10. It's not enough to make me want to quit. It's not a 2 out of 10, but it's not a 10 out of 10, right? And that's the danger zone is like the comfortable zone where it's like, I don't want to risk losing this because I have something. That's what happens. So I think that for me, certainly I never would have I don't think I would have become the entrepreneur I was meant to be if I hadn't lost my job.
Yeah.
So they really freed me from that like mistaken belief. I was like in the friend zone with my job, whereas like it was never gonna be a real relationship. I'm never gonna be happy, but I'm also not gonna leave because I was like, well, I'll just stick around until I pay off my student loan in X number of years, right? Like you start thinking
Yeah.
like that. That's when you know you have a problem when you're like factoring in how many years until you pay off your student loan and stuff. And getting pushed out, it really forced me to make a decision. I could have gone back into the industry, looked for another employer or whatever, but I wasn't happy and it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. And even people had told me multiple times, like, you're in the wrong thing. You should be an entrepreneur. You should be doing an MBA program, not this. Like, what are you doing with your life? And I just never really I didn't listen to people's advice. So from there, I just began trying a lot of ideas. And the one thing about it is that you always think, oh, I could never be an entrepreneur. But if it's like, I know this is a horrible way of saying, but it's like you eat what you kill when you're in sales. Like if you don't hunt, you don't eat.
Hmm.
And that's the same thing. Like if I didn't find clients and I couldn't get the clients to keep me, I couldn't make enough money to eat every month. So it forces you to do whatever it takes. You stop worrying about the how and you just do it. Like people are shocked that I was getting really, really big clients from Craigslist. Like I'm talking, one of my clients won a Grammy that year. Another of my clients was running like a multi-billion-dollar company. Like amazing people, really rich people use Craigslist.
Really, really.
Like, and it's just you put yourself out there everywhere. You get really proactive, and people are like, "How do you get clients?" I'm like, "You just do whatever it takes." Here's how you get clients: go everywhere, tell everyone what you do, and ask everyone to work with you.
God.
Like.
I swear we have the same mind. Like I've told people that as well. Like when that happened to me, same thing. I shouted from the mountaintops, this is what I'm doing. And I told everyone on Facebook and everybody I met, and like you just share it and it attracts.
So a lot of people say to me like, oh, because now I do ghostwriting instead of SEO. They go, how do you get these big ghostwriting clients? And I'm like, let me ask you a question. How many people have you told you're a ghostwriter? It's like, nobody yet. They don't want, I was like, yeah, you don't want to tell anyone until you have a client. Like, I get that. And I was like, oh, because here's what I did. Here's how I get clients now. I watched Californication because that's a show about a writer who's too cocky, who like offends everyone and treats everyone terrible, but his books are so good, they put up with it.
Mm.
And I go, oh, there's a dial, right? Of how much of like a jerk you can be. And if you're at level 0, people go, oh, your writing must not be any good because you're so nice. So you just ratchet it and people until you go to just enough where people go, this guy must be amazing because he's a little bit of a jerk. That's the zone you want to be in because people say, oh, that's confidence, right?
Right, right.
So people, I like, here's one of the first things I ever did. I printed a bunch of business cards that only had a phone number on them. No words at all. And I would give them people, the people would go, your name's not on here. And I said, if you can't remember my name, don't call me.
I love
I
that.
saw that on the X-Files. I didn't come up with that. That's from the X-Files.
That's awesome.
I was like, that's what spies do. Like, I thought that was so cool. It comes across really confident,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's like, oh, if you're not going to, like, because everyone else's cards has their picture, a QR code, like 6 pieces of information about them. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need to do that. If I'm not memorable enough in this interaction, because you can write down on the card all that stuff. I want you to do that so that you're being interactive with me. And it makes a really big difference when you just, if everyone's zigging, you zag. If everyone else has a blank card, then you have a card with information on it. So for me, it was really about constantly trying. And I used to go, I'm a huge fan of meetup.com. I love going to meetup events because everyone at meetup events is awful. So I went to meetups for entrepreneurs and every single person there was trying to close each other as clients. And I would just write down all the things people did that I found offensive. And I said, I didn't like when this happened. Like one guy would go around and put a business card at every single place, like table or wherever before people would get there. And I go, okay, I'm never doing that because it turned me off. I don't know. I didn't know that would turn me off until I saw it happen. Another guy was like, what did he say he was? I think he said something architect, like business architect or something like that. And I thought, oh, I hate that. So I wrote that down. So I wrote some descriptions, like the way he described his job was so anathema to me. It sounded like so fake.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people in the coaching spaces, they create these things like I'm a leadership coach. And I'm like, oh, what have you done as far as leadership?
Yeah.
Because like when I was in college, they had an offer of a degree of leadership. And I had a friend who was just in ROTC and he was in charge of a military base in Germany. And he was in charge of like $136 million in tanks and 14,000 soldiers. And I was like, yeah, that's way better than a degree in leadership. Like it's just, what have you actually led, right? He's like, oh, I did small. Military teaches you to lead for sure. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where I just looked at what did people do that I liked and what people do that I didn't like. And I met some great people there, right? But you also meet a lot of people, like there were some people that were like in an MLM for energy drinks. The guy's like, I got a bunch in my trunk. You want one? Like, I'm not drinking a trunk Red Bull or whatever brand it was. It wasn't Red Bull, it was something else. I'm like, I'm not drinking a trunk hot energy drink that's like, you make money by reselling it to your friends. Like I'm not getting into that world, but I learned a lot by going to these meetings. I learned what I liked and what I didn't like, how to get clients, how to not get clients. Like some of the events have people from really big businesses who are looking to meet people, right? So it's not just all entrepreneurs. And then you learn like how to write a proposal and what will happen if you give too much information away, they'll just steal it. I learned that lesson. A hotel stole my entire proposal because I realized the person who'd hired another SEO agency would get fired if my proposal ever got to their boss. Because I said, oh, your agency's stealing from you. Here's 20 points of how I know. I said, number 1, your Google Places listing redirects to Motel 6. Another company claimed your listing. You're a 5-star hotel. And your SEO agency didn't catch this, right? I said, the listing on your website has the wrong phone number. It goes to another hotel. So other agents, like all of this stuff. And then they go, oh, you're so unprofessional. We're never going to hire you. And then I watched as they made all the changes, right? I watched them update everything. And so I learned my lesson that people will steal from you. And I realized that I go, oh, the person who saw my stuff was like amazed, but their boss is the one who hired the agency that was stealing from them. And rather than admit they'd made a mistake and hire me, they just covered it and destroyed all the evidence, right? And that's what people do. When given the opportunity, people destroy the evidence. So I learned some things the hard way, and that's what you have to do. You're going to get bad clients. I was doing SEO, but I got a web design client who was blind, and so I shouldn't have taken the job. But what he would do is have his friend look at the website and describe it to him, and then he would call me and tell me what changes he wanted based on what his friend had said. And the website was supposed to be the perfect combination of sugar daddy dating and Facebook, because if there's one people who are into sugar daddy dating want is evidence. And he would, every week it was like, hey, can you make the money in the picture bigger? That was like the most common, like every single week. And I ended up being, of course, the website's long gone, right? Because it was a terrible idea. Yeah. But you take whatever you can. I just learned my lesson that like, oh, this client, he approved everything. I closed out the project and he goes, actually, we want to make a bunch of changes. I had to rehire another development team. And so I lost money because there was all these phone calls and stuff. So you start to learn some clients will never be happy and some clients will never be workable. When I was doing other coaching, I one time was working with someone one-on-one and he had this massive breakthrough and he goes, I feel like nothing's changed. I said, I can never work with you. If you can't detect progress, I said, have you ever had progress like before? He goes, no, nothing like this ever happened before in my life, but I feel exactly the same. I said, you're fired. Right. First, you have to have that instinct to go, oh, this person, if they can't detect change, they'll be unhappy no matter how significant the change. And one of my clients had gone to the same high school as me, but 10 years earlier. And he like gave me a nickname and was kind of being a little bit of a bully to me. And I was like, listen, man, you're paying me $1,000 a month. I don't actually work for you. You pay me for a consulting fee. But I do have some good news. He goes, what's that? I go, you're fired. He goes, but you work for me. And I said, and yet here we are and I'm firing you. Like amazing. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, by the way. Like firing someone that you don't like feels really good. And that's the difference between working for someone else and working for yourself is that, oh, I just need to replace this client, and learning that clients who have a lot of money bother you the least. One of my clients owned hunting land. And so the cheapest piece of hunting land his company sold was $1.5 million. And everything was up from there. And he was like, yeah, if you can just generate one sale per decade, we're all good. And then the other thing he said, he goes, listen, every time I talk to you on the phone, I'm losing money. Like, your time is worth so much less than mine. Just send an email in once a month to my secretary. No one's going to look at it.
Yeah.
But we'll just auto pay you. And I only spoke to him then. And then when I stopped doing SEO like a year and a half later, those are the two times we talked. I was like, yeah, I'm just not doing this anymore because it was too many. One of the updates was just too tough. I go, I just can't do this anymore. You have to be 100% in on learning those things. So I learned a lot from those experiences. And the only way you learn is by having a good client, by having a bad client, by going outside your comfort zone and just really pushing. And all of that was kind of my first year in business, is starting to realize what worked and what didn't, what a good client was, what a bad client was, and to don't just take every single job. Take the right jobs that you can really deliver for.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, if you're starting out, you'll take whatever you can get sometimes, but then as time goes on, you can trim that down a little bit. It's the big message here. I mean, and that also resonates with me and probably will with a lot of people, is just this massive action component to what you're doing, where you're not just sitting back thinking about what I should do or waiting for things to come to you, hoping for the best. If I set up shop, if I have a website, people will come. And it's not it. You got to get out there. You have to, like we said before, you have to shout it from the mountaintops, or wear it on your sleeve, literally, maybe, have those business cards, whatever you got to do and what business you're in. And just that becomes you. I think you have to become that identity. Like you introduce yourself as, hey, I'm a web designer or I'm a SEO guy. And you just tell people what you're doing. And not everybody's going to care. But you start finding those people that do. And I love that. I love that you were also, when you were going to these events and stuff, just seeing what other people are doing that I shouldn't do that. That makes me uncomfortable. That really turned me off. These are the things not to do, not just looking at what the people tell you to do, or that, what seems to be working for somebody else, but also looking at what's not working and noting those things.
Yeah, you're going to run into things you really like and run into things you really don't like.
Yeah.
Like one of the people I met, his business card was 3 dots pinched out of a piece of metal. One for London, one for Shanghai, and one for, I forget, like New York.
Yeah.
And he lived in London and we were friends. He goes, yeah, the other 2 numbers are fake. He goes, I just have a London office. I was like, this is genius, right? Like nowadays he had him redirect to his London number. He's like, there's not 3 offices. It just looked really cool. And I thought it was brilliant. He's like, because it's a metal business card, people take it really seriously. He doesn't hand them out very much. Like it has an effect to it. So you can also learn, I like this business card. I don't like that business card, right? Oh, this is very interesting to me. So you learn what really you go, that's so cool. And those are the things you absorb and go, I'm going to use that, right? Like you try, and I don't think now I would do the business card that's just a phone number, but when you're like starting out in late 20s and you're like, trying an idea because it's also like, well, I don't know, I can't afford a logo. I don't have any of that stuff. I just want to keep it really simple. And it's cheaper if you just have one line of text, right? You pay per character on a business card. I'm like, I'll just take 7. So you start off like that, and you see what happens, and people are like, wow, this guy is so confident. So you learn what people read as confidence, and I was like, just figuring it out. And a lot of people have the stink of desperation. You learn what that smells like, and you learn to hide it. So I've been in negotiations where I'm like 2 weeks late on rent, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell this person that. I'm not going to leak that just to close the deal because I know they'll ask for a lower price. I would too. So you learn through these experiences that whenever you leak desperation or let people know you're in a bad situation, like they'll always take advantage of that. And you just have to learn to be strong and to ask for bigger numbers. I learned a lot of things. Like one of the things I did is I would always just say a bigger number. Every client's like, what does it cost? So my first client, I said 500. And she goes, okay, I'll pay you 200 a month. The next client was paying 500 a month. And then I went to use car dealership, which for SEO, everyone wants a car dealership, right? Everyone wants to be SEO for the car dealership. And these guys were very, let's just say they lost their branding. They had to stop using the brand they were part of while I was there because they lost a lawsuit. And they were like, how much do you charge? And I was like, $10,000 a month, because that was the biggest number I could think of. And then I said, say a big number, then don't say anything. I'm standing in the office with 5 guys. They're all like, we'll give you $2,000. I go, okay. Because my biggest client was paying me 500. I 4x my income by just saying a bigger number. You can only do that when you're working for yourself. So
what do they call that? What do they call that? There's somebody talks about that all the time. You start with a high number, and you're setting something. Like you're setting a I'm not going to think of it. Why am I bringing up things I can't think of?
I just always say double. I always double what the last person paid.
Yeah.
And you'll find whatever number you say, there's someone who will go, oh, that's so low. You must be trash.
Anchor. I think that's what it is. Anchor. Sorry.
Yeah. You anchor it high. Yeah. And for me, it wasn't even trying to be tactical. I'm just like, well, how else do I get more money? I'll just say a bigger number because everyone wants to negotiate you down. Mm-hmm. So if you think you're worth $1,000 an hour, you have to ask for 2.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you ask, people are going to push it down. And if you have that buffer, then you're like, that's fine. Right. So I was like, they were like, oh, we'll only give you 4 times what other people are paying you. Right. I was like, that was amazing to me. Right. It was a win for them because they got me at 20% of what I asked for. And it was literally, the guy goes, how much do you charge? And I said to myself in my head, here's what I go, what's the biggest number you know? 10,000. That's how I came up with it. I didn't even think of 11,000. I thought 10,000 is the biggest number I know. So the willingness to just say a number and be quiet is a lesson that I learned because you just don't negotiate against yourself. And mostly it's just exactly like you said, go out there, be proactive, meet a lot of people, be confident about what you do. You have to be able to explain what you do. A lot of people, when you ask what they do, if they can't tell you in one sentence, you have a problem. So one of my friends at the time, I learned this lesson. She was dating a guy and I go, what do you do? And he goes, I'm a writer. And I go, oh, what do you write? Books, magazine, articles? No. Music. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What And it took me like 8 questions to find out he'd written music for a band I knew. And I was like, why wouldn't you just tell me that? Like, why did you make me dig for it? Because it made me it made me think that he's not good or that he's ashamed of it. Because when you're like, if I had to ask you 6 questions to find out you did WordPress, if you're like, oh, I do computer stuff. What kind of computer stuff? Online. What do you do online? I build websites. What kind of websites? Like once people visit, if you make me keep asking, then I think there's something weird. Now it's an interrogation, right? So the way I get clients is I learned this from my friend was a dentist in London. This is another story. I have the craziest friends. He one day started putting out press releases that he was a celebrity dentist and paying paparazzi to send in pictures of him to different magazines. And it worked.
No way.
So yeah, absolutely worked. So he has pictures of him like this on the walls of his office.
That is wild.
The most brilliant thing I'd ever seen. He shared office spaces with a plastic surgeon. So he released a press release called you can get implants at the dentist now, which is like, in the loosest sense of the word, yes, it's in the same building, but it wasn't like it was, you know what I mean? And he came up with these really 3 or 4 great press releases, submitted some photos of paparazzis, and whenever he'd be next to a famous person, he would submit a picture of them at the same nightclub or something, right? And they, on a slow news day, they'll publish something. And he had 4 or 5 magazines that had put celebrity dentist and then his name. And he had those framed on the walls of his office.
That's
And
awesome.
it was like the brilliantest thing I'd ever seen. He goes, yeah, I just figured out one day I'll just convince everyone that I'm a celebrity. And his dentist office, by the way, was like a spaceship. It was so nice. Like I had an incident where I had a tooth broken at the gym, and he goes, "I'll fix it." I go to his place, and I was like, "Where am I?" I've never seen a dentist office this nice before. So he also had like an amazing situation, but it
Yeah.
really made a difference to say that.
Yeah.
So that's why when people tell, I say, "What do you do?" I go, "Celebrity ghostwriter."
Celebrity.
And as soon as I say that, I've doubled what I'm worth or tripled it. Like people completely react differently. So if you can describe what you do quickly and tightly, right? Like, and has something built in of value, right? Like, as soon as you, like we were talking earlier and you said custom website designer, that's completely different. You add the word custom because you start thinking like a custom motorcycle goes from 20 grand to 100 grand, right? Like it completely changes it. So there's certain words that have so much value. It doesn't have to be celebrity. Everyone doesn't have to say celebrity, right? But it's this other element where people immediately add value. So the less words it takes to describe your job, the more valuable it is. That's really where the power is. It's kind of like people that have a one word name. Like everyone knows what Madonna does, right? One word, she's figured it out. So if you have a one word name or a one word or two word job title, it's better than a three word. So I'm always looking to really be efficient in my description because people like, it's funny. You have to learn like one of the things you try and learn is like, oh, what's my elevator pitch? Which is someone's trapped in an elevator with me and I have to tell them what I do before they can escape, right? That's to me, that sounds like a nightmare scenario. Like it doesn't sound like the other person's having a good time, but I got to get it out before. And it does force you to be fast because some people, what do you do? And it takes a long time to describe. And eventually I started focusing on problem solution. I would say, oh, I help small businesses get more customers. Nobody's not interested in that, right? Now it's much more interesting. Like, so you can do it a different way, which is like what problem do you solve? Because everyone solves a different problem. Like web design is a different problem to SEO and Facebook ads. And so you can not focus on the mechanism, right? Because it doesn't matter. Like, oh, I just get more phone calls for my customers. Everyone wants that. So if you start to understand what people want, right? Like, because like every person who comes to me now for a book either wants to be famous, to tell their story, and they don't care if anyone reads it, but they want to get their story out, to establish authority, like they want to speak from stage, or they want to generate leads and customers directly from the book. So that's the first question I ask, because once I know, that covers everything, right? I know exactly what they want from the book because they're a very specific need. And once you know someone's need, you can really help them. And a lot of times people come to you, they've had a bad experience. My very first client had worked with a custom web designer, and I'll never forget it. And all they had done was install this theme for WordPress. I think it was called Parade. And she's like, no one ever calls. And I said, oh, that's because your website doesn't have your phone number on it. And it was like a revelation, right? And I felt so bad for her because it's not right.
Yeah.
And she had one of those cars that has the phone number on the side of the car. Like she was really putting in that grind, right? She's like, I get tons of calls based on the car, but none from the website. I said, yeah, your phone number's not here. I said, let me just do that for you. I'm not a web designer, but I'll put your phone number in the top right corner in big red numbers and let's see if that makes a difference. And of course it did. Right? So sometimes it's a small change. And there was that story that I heard that like, oh, you hire the plumber. It takes him 3 seconds to fix it. And he's like, yeah, it's $5 for me to turn the wrench and $295 for me to know where to turn it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing is that because sometimes people can't perceive what's hard and what's not hard. They can't tell what's expertise and they go, oh, wow, it's so easy. So you have to build a little bit of confidence in what you do so that you can have these conversations. Like earlier today, I was in a meeting with a bunch of other AI guys and there was a video AI guy and I started asking questions about video and I named like 7 different video AI tools he'd never heard of. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm the expert here. And another guy was like, oh, I do coaching with this and this and that. And I started asking about 3 other things. And I was like, oh, and like really boosted my confidence to know, because sometimes I think that other people will know stuff and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but I'm always trying to learn.
Yeah.
And it really boosts your confidence when you realize, oh, I know this. I know more than these other people who are experts in their fields because I'm really focused on something else. And that you have to find these ways to build your confidence because most of the time, the reason you ask for a low number is you don't think you're worth very much.
Yeah.
Most people, their first year working for themselves, make the same amount of money as they did for their last job, which means they determine someone else figured out what their value is. So if your last job was paying you $36,000 a year, you'll make $36,000 a year in your next job when you work for yourself, because that's what you think you're worth. So you have to break through that. That was the next lesson I learned, because that's what happened to me. I made $36,000 in my job that I lost, and I made $36,100 as an SEO the next year. Then someone told me that, and the next year after that, I made 20 times more money. As soon as I realized that, I don't have to limit myself, because I'd go, I made $3,000, I'm done for the month. That was my mindset.
Yeah.
And I had to break through that, because it was just like a silly thing. I go, I'm worth more, because most people undervalue what they're worth, and it attracts the wrong type of client. Because if you're the cheapest option, you get the cheapest clients are the ones who call the most, because it's their last $500 a month, their last $200 a month, and they put the most pressure on you because their desperation is leaking through the phone every time they call. And that's so much more stressful than the client who said, I'm literally losing money by talking to you. It's a little bit hurts your feelings, but I was also like, oh my gosh, I just get $2,000 a month. I don't have to call him. All my other clients want to talk to me all the time. And I have clients who would call me all the time. Like, how come I'm not getting results? Like, yeah, because I'm on the phone with you. Like, you're literally I said, yeah, I spend 20 hours a month on the phone with you. That's your budget. That's how many hours a month you get.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do anything if you're always calling me.
So many great things to dig into here. And I want to get to AI. So I'm just going to wrap a few things in a little bow tie or something. But no, like you said, confidence is it's a huge theme here, and having that confidence, and like you said, kind of, even if your life isn't great, or bad things are happening, you still have to come across like confident. You have to kind of hide those things in situations where you're trying to sell yourself, sell your services, your products, whatever. And you just have to show up and be in the pocket, in the moment. And also, one of the things that resonated with me as well is, because I've used this before. I know I've told people this before. It's and it's something I learned at some stage. I've been around for forever, for like 100 years, and but when you're in a room with clients or even other like colleagues or peers or whatever, more than you think. I think it's so easy for us to think, gosh, I'm not good enough, or that imposter syndrome, like. You actually know way more than you think and you probably know more than your client. Even if your client is confident themselves and they talk like they're the bomb without swearing, you probably know more than they do, especially if you've been at the game for a while, you've been studying this stuff, you live and breathe it. They don't. And that's so important to realize. I had a programmer tell me that once. That place I worked that eventually got out of the WordPress business. I worked alongside a PHP guy, a really, really smart guy, Zen certified, like the smartest programmer I've ever met. And these guys are all brilliant at that company. But I remember, we'd do like code reviews and stuff. We'd be talking about, I was doing actual programming back then. And I would show up just like, this guy is way better than me, but he was so good. And like, he's like, Matt, more than you think, you're better than you think, like he instilled that in me. Like, I'm like, yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe actually, and we don't all of us don't know everything for sure, especially if you're a programmer, because there's so much and there's 90 different ways to do things. But that's, really, really great message there to, work on your confidence and learn how to show up like a professional. And that's a lot of good stuff. Well, I want to actually pivot a little bit here. Or pivot back to your story. So you're doing SEO, which is awesome. That's a whole nother conversation we could have, because I've done a little bit of that over the years. But, now you did SEO for a while. You said a year and a half or something. You did SEO, and I'm curious, because I know what you do now. How did you end up where you are? What you're doing now in AI and talking about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I moved into course creation. So I made a course about how I built an SEO agency and how I had gotten up to that 10 clients that
Mm.
you kind of can manage on your own. And it just sold like gangbusters. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And it kind of brought me to the world of having a mailing list, making products, being an affiliate for other products, people an affiliate for your product. And that's really what I've been doing mostly for the last 10 years is growing my audience, building your mailing list, mailing products and people mailing your product, kind of doing that. That's been my main business. And then just as I've gone through that, I've been expert in different things. Like for a long time, my main stuff I would teach people is really how to start and grow a blog because that's how I got first famous. And then after that, I taught a lot about really focused on books. So I was like, here's how to write a book, here's how to build a business around a book. Because I'm really wanted to make it clear that I don't teach authorship. A lot of people, most authors never make any money, right? They write one book, they put it out there, and then they don't do anything afterwards, right? And they make less than $100 in their entire life from their book.
Mm.
That's not what I teach. I teach how to use it as part of a business, right? Either to establish authority, to speak from stage, or to generate leads. So whether you're hiring me as a client to write your book or you write it yourself, I want you to see it as a tool. Like the main value in a book is not the royalties, because you have to sell a lot of books with like a tiny royalty to make any money. The real value is, oh, if I have a course that's $197 behind my 7 book, if 1 out of every 50 readers buys that, I've doubled my income.
Yeah.
And I can use all that money to run more ads on the book. So that's really what I was teaching for a long time in the business space, always trying to teach something special. And then just it shifted. And this year I got really into ChatGPT in January. And what happened was a lot of people I look up to would do a lesson and I watch them teach it and I go, I could do better than that. So I discovered that the way I think is so natural to ChatGPT that it's just luck. It happens to think the dice have rolled my way because I can't do Sudoku. So I have zero ability to do Sudoku. I can't do so things I can't do.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, I can do things that no one else can do. Every time someone says it can't do this, I go, well, I think it can. I bet I can get it to do that, right? So like people are like, oh, it will never pass an AI test. I go, I bet I can come with a prompt that always passes every AI test at 100%. And I did. And I go, I wonder if I can write a super prompt, which is one prompt. Like I go, I want to do 50 Pinterest pins, but I only want to write one prompt and it gives me all 50 and they're perfect. So I wrote this prompt and it's good. And I'm always like, can I make it better? But it takes me a couple hundred iterations to get it perfect. So I'm always looking for a super prompt. And this week I'm talking about Pinterest. Next week I'll be talking about TikTok script or whatever. I'm always looking for better and better iterations of my prompts. And I just have this ability to take what's useful and avoid what's boring or what's distracting. Because there's a lot of AI that's very distracting but not useful. And there's a lot of AI that's very technical that no one will ever implement because, for example, you can install ChatGPT through an API on your local computer and run these really long, complex algorithms where it does an automated search. It doesn't stop until it gets to your result. Of all, like less than 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10% of actual ChatGPT users will ever do that. That's too technical. Now, the guy who teaches that's amazing. I love following his videos. My job is to follow those videos and find the nugget that's useful for a normal user who's not a power user, who's not kind of programming. Because anytime I tell to someone, okay, step 1, open the terminal, you've now eliminated 99.9% of people that use computers, right? They go, what's the terminal? I'm like, do you remember DOS? And that's right. That's a huge barrier for people because that's an old technology and people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, before Windows, there was this other way of doing stuff where it was just letters on the screen.
We still have terminals.
Have you seen
we still have terminals laying around when you're web development.
Exactly. Only web developers and programmers are comfortable with that, right? Otherwise, I have to say to someone, have you seen War Games? Remember when he's typing on the computer? It's that. And that movie's from like almost 40 years ago. So that's the issue is that for a lot of people, that's too technical. The other end of it is like, there's some really cool things you can do with video. Most of it is not ready for prime time. Most of it, it's really cool looking, but you would never really watch it because it makes you dizzy or it will give you a seizure. Like it's in that space right now, or it's in the uncanny valley where it makes you very uncomfortable. So because of that, I don't teach a lot of video stuff. I teach what is really practical because I kind of said, oh, there's a middle road where I say, hey, I'm going to teach you the least amount of ChatGPT possible to get you the result you want. So I want it always to be the fewest prompts, the littlest learning. And one of the big revelations I had when I shifted from teaching people ChatGPT to giving them copy and paste prompts, it's the same thing. You get the prompts in a video, but I focus on selling the prompts and the video comes with it. Sells a lot better because I go, okay, just copy and paste what I do. And that really is my approach. Like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of books on ChatGPT, and most of them are bad. That's why I wrote my book. I read this one I read a bunch that were selling really well, and it really upset me because I go, these prompts don't work. If someone tries these, they'll get a bad result and they'll quit, and then they'll be in trouble when ChatGPT is mandatory. So one thing I noticed, these books will have the prompt and they'll tell you what type of response will you get, but they don't show you the response. So it's like listening to a conversation, but you can't hear the other person. That's why my book has a lot of these really long responses from ChatGPT. And some people complain about that. I'm like, yeah, but it's the only way you're going to learn. The only way you'll really learn is by seeing my question and ChatGPT's response. So that's why my book has misspellings. If it's a prompt and I misspelled something or I didn't capitalize something, I'm not changing that, because you need to see what I entered. That's the same for programming, right? Imagine if you show programming and you show the code but not the result. So someone who tries it and it errors, they won't know why. So it's very important to show the before and the after the compile. Maybe I'm using the wrong words there, but that's kind of the idea. You have to see, oh, I entered this code and here's how the page looks different now, right? I changed the color. Well, show me a picture of the new color page. That's very important, right? So that's been my approach to the teaching, is that you have to be very, very practical, and you have to show, here's what I did, here's what happened. Here's what I did, here's what happened. And slowly people learn the why. Because becoming a prompt engineer, no one wants to be a prompt engineer. It sounds like a super nerd job.
Prompt engineer.
But it just means that you can come up with your own ideas and you can kind of understand it. And you get faster.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that really makes the difference, is with AI, you can do everything faster. Bad ideas, you find out they're bad ideas faster. Good ideas, you find out they're good ideas faster. And that's the most exciting part for me.
I think all of this is, number one, amazing that we're even having this conversation. Like this has been a thing for like 10 years. Like we have all this content out there, all these people teaching this thing, ChatGPT. It's only been here since like the beginning of this year. Only we've known about it, right? It's been there before that, but when it became really, really hot, I feel like it's just like, it's become so prominent on the internet and in our jobs. It's the things that you're saying here, like, now I can actually tie this into our previous conversation. Like one of the ways you learn how to do something is kind of the same way when you first started out and trying to find your thing to do online or to, and go out and get clients, is just shout it from the rooftops and take massive action. I think one of the things that has, why I'm actually benefiting from these tools and ChatGPT specifically, is just because I use it. I use it a lot and I iterate on it. Like you said, that first prompt is probably not going to get you the results you want, but you keep tweaking it and keep doing that. And I think that's brilliant, but also I think it's also brilliant. A reason why someone would go to, your materials and learn from you is because you're the guy doing all of that way more and getting the results and tweaking and sharing, and to be able to learn from somebody that's in the trenches doing that stuff, kind of cuts to the chase. Before we move on, I wanted to, as I told you this before we started recording, that I decided to sit down before this podcast today and just all the ways that I use it in my business. And I don't even think I've hit on all the ways. I use also generative AI and stuff for different reasons in web design. But here's just from my iPad. Here we go. How I use ChatGPT. First of all, I don't have a link. I just go to the browser, go to the top, to the space up there, and just CH, and then ChatGPT shows up, and boom, I'm there. But I use it to improve emails all the time. I've been doing this a lot lately. Like I'll do a rough draft of an email, especially if it's to a client or something. I just say, can you improve it? Can you tweak this, improve it? Would you improve anything? Email improvement, email templates, scripts, things we use, SOPs, documentation, huge. Explanations. Now I'm in a tech space. Once in a while, even I get confused. I'm like, what is that? what is the difference between this and this? I even did one was, can you describe the difference between Next.js and Gatsby? Just little things like that really is helpful. But a little bit of coding, writing things, not writing a whole website, but just a snippet of code for something, or it really knows, figure out what it knows. Again, through experimentation, you'll be surprised. Like, it actually knows WordPress pretty deeply. And so it understands the terminology and can bring things back. DNS and all the other technical stuff that I use it for, technical questions. Transcript processing for this podcast. I will be running this through ChatGPT with my custom made prompt that's going to generate titles for me, a description. It takes some iterations sometimes, but it gives me a really, really good head start. Social content, polishing, tweaking. It doesn't write things in full, especially the first time I throw that prompt in there, but it's like a partner. And it's like you, I think every brain is different out there. And, but I think if you approach it like I think I approach it naturally, like I'm talking to you, like I have a conversation with it and it has a conversation back with me. And it's this beautiful thing. What do you, so that's how I'm using it. So I use it every day, all the time, throughout the day, for various things. Do you think what a lot of people are afraid to use this, or they've had those bad experiences, or what is stopping somebody from fully implementing this and using it in their day to day? What do you think are the pain points for people?
Sure. So ChatGPT is really interesting because everyone's heard of it, but about 86% of people have not used it once. So we have this idea that everyone's using it. It's not true. And of those 14% to 16% of people that have used it once, most of them haven't used it twice. So I think the first thing is that there's a lot of misunderstanding because we call it an AI. They think, oh, this is a type of AI that could take over the world. This is a dangerous place to be. It's not that type of AI. It doesn't have that level of sentience. It's not even close, right? But the people have that, and especially because it's very interesting. A lot of the people who talk about that say, oh, we need laws about AI. It happens to be people that work for this company. And I'm like, oh, they're trying to get laws to stop open source AI, like, because that's their competitor. So there's some of the stuff that's out there that's affecting your mind. It's not really something you have to worry about because there is a danger that the best AI will be a free AI. So a few months ago, scientists wrote a white paper saying that there's no way an open source AI will ever beat a paid AI because they have this massive budget. 2 weeks later, free AI beat ChatGPT 3.5 in every single test. So those guys had to take back their paper because 2 weeks, they wrote never, and 2 weeks later it happened. Oh. Now, ChatGPT 4 hasn't been beaten on every metric, but it's been beaten on some. Mm-hmm. So there are people developing free open source AIs. There's a new open source AI called Flower or something like that uses the idea of torrent. So there's a small piece of AI on a bunch of different computers to give you the strength of a supercomputer. You kind of do these interesting things. So people are doing things that are amazing in the open source world. Very, very interesting, right? So the doom and gloom stuff is just like, that's why that exists, and you can ignore that. That's the first thing. The second thing is people are afraid that an AI will think they're stupid. That was my first fear. I was like, what if this AI is keeping track of who it thinks is dumb and who it thinks is smart? Because I know my Kindle does that. Like Amazon definitely has what it thinks my IQ is because it keeps track of how fast I read, which words I have to ask for definitions of, all that stuff. So I was afraid that OpenAI would do that. You have to let go of that fear that, oh, you're going to ask a dumb question, because what you can do is delete the conversation. They can't afford to store the records. It's too much data. Yeah. So if you delete a conversation, it's gone forever. They can't recover it. It doesn't exist. So I delete bad conversations where I get into fights with it, because it happens sometimes. I can get confrontational, like, because I can program it with my personality. And so when I'm talking to myself, I get into fights a lot because I'm like very strong personality. I don't like, this is why I've never wanted a twin brother, because I know what happened. Just that's not going to work for me. So that's the biggest fear I think people have, is I don't want the AI to think I'm stupid. And we have to let go of, realize it doesn't keep a record. It doesn't think that way. Mm-hmm. That's real. And as soon as you release that, that's going to get you around. The next fear people have is what happened to that lawyer, which is ChatGPT will lie to me. I'll repeat the lie and I'll get in trouble. right? This lawyer in New York cited a bunch of case law that weren't real cases.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what happened there is if you understand how AI works, it will never happen to you. The reason it happened is because ChatGPT is like a child. So think of ChatGPT like a 6-year-old. ChatGPT will lie to you rather than get in trouble. And so it doesn't ever want to say, I don't know. So if you ask a question and you put your thumb on the scale, which says, hey, can you give me proof of? Or can you give me an example of? That's when it lies. That's how you get it to lie about 90% of the time. And I caught it before everyone else. I knew it was lying. And I actually wrote a video. I didn't publish it. I would put this video out about ChatGPT's lie. I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want them to get mad at me. But because I figured out, I would say, oh, can you give me the sources? And every time it would be all 404s. And at first, my first thought was like, wow, someone is deleting all these news stories. And then I was like, wait a minute, what's more likely?
Yeah.
That like every news story that ChatGPT tells me about has been deleted or that it's lying. And it told me a really sophisticated story about a waitress who'd been harassed and the guy going to jail and all this stuff. It was all fake. None of the thing had happened. Like the two people didn't even exist. So I learned my lesson from something like that because I was trying to, I forget what book I was working on, but it was a proof for clients having a story. I think about red flags.
Yeah.
So I learned that that's what triggers the lie. Like so you can activate the lying in ChatGPT by saying, can you give me examples of this? Also, if you try to make it do things it's not meant to do, it's not a math AI. So if you ask it to do math, I was talking to someone yesterday who was trying to get it to do some stock stuff and it didn't know how to factor in a stock split. So it couldn't get the correct number and then it was lying to him because he knew. And I was like, yeah, if it doesn't know what a stock split is, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, kind of ChatGPT is kind of like fake it till you make it kind of thing. I'll just fake it.
Well, like my kids do the same thing. My kids would rather lie to me, right, than disappoint me. Like, oh, they never admit I didn't hide my sister's toy, but I know where it is. Right? Like that's what it does. So if you understand that what causes that, you don't have to worry about that, right? You don't want it, like you don't want ChatGPT to help you on your research paper. It's not a great research tool. That's not where it shines. Where it shines is as an accelerator. Mm-hmm. So if you let go of these fears and kind of understand how it works on a little simple way, that will help you out. The next thing is that you're going to get bad responses. Here's why. ChatGPT uses all of the data that's been fed and it weights it equally. So if it like when you're asking, say, design me a website, for example, it's going to look at every website that's ever been built and weight them all equally. It's not going to say, oh, well, this website is better than this website. It doesn't do that, which means every one of those GeoCities websites that people made in the 1990s is throwing off the curve, right? Where there were those like flashing, there was a lot of flashing colors and autoplay music back then. Like really, websites were very offensive and they would actually blast music and you couldn't turn it off sometimes. And they were flashing colors and really like hurt your eyes. So we've come a long way from then, but all of that data is still out there. So if you just say, average of every website, all those bad websites throw off the curve because there's less good websites. You have to narrow down the data set. For example, if you just say, oh, build me a business website based on the Fortune 500 company websites, now you're listing it to 500 websites that all make money from the website. Things like that is how you limit it. So you don't want to increase the data, you want to decrease it. And the more you do that and refine what data source it's using, then you're going to get really, really good results. So the fifth and final thing I'll say is always start with a question. ChatGPT, I want to do X. Please ask me questions with the information you need to give me the best result. ChatGPT, I want to find out who's my ideal customer. What information do you need to find my ideal customer? ChatGPT, I want to write a song. I was working on this one for a project and it was like, ask these really insightful questions. And it was like, I wouldn't think of it because otherwise, what kind of song is it going to write? Like Americana, because most songs were written before like modern music. So it's going to write like a 1800 style song. Unless you tell it what genre, it has to guess. If you say, write me a song, it has to guess the genre and it's going to be random. But if you say, write me a rap, it's narrowing down to a song written since 1980 because rap didn't exist before then, right? So you start to narrow it down. So the more data you give it, it will say things like, well, what emotions do you want the song to evoke? Is there any particular imagery you want in the song? Do you want the song to be warm or cold? It asked me these really interesting questions, right? It was like, do you care about the rhyme scheme? Because some people really do and some people really don't. So it starts to ask these questions and you're going to get a result that's much closer to what you want. So the more you switch from command response and into question answer, you're going to get much better things. That's how you avoid garbage in, garbage out. Because if you just say, hey, write me a song, well, the song is bad. That's not the computer's fault, right? Because you didn't give it enough data to
Right.
write the song that you like. So the more you switch to this, and what's cool is it's also easier. It's way easier. What ChatGPT will do is give you like 10 questions. I would go, stop, ask me one at a time. And then I will answer one and will ask me the next one. If it has 10 questions, usually by question 7 or 8, it doesn't have to ask the last couple because it's gotten what it needs. And it's really cool to see that happen. So I loved when it did that for me for customer avatar because it's really hard for a person, any new business. You go, well, I don't have any customers. Yeah, but who's your customer avatar? Because that's going to affect how you design everything, right? Every training about copywriting and advertising and marketing says, who's your ideal customer? And you go, I don't know. And they're like, well, how are you? Of course I don't know. I don't have any customers yet, right? It's like a chicken egg thing. I was so impressed with that result. Like it really, that's when I really switched a lot of my thinking. I was like, I'm always starting with a question. And it lets you get so much closer to a better result because the most of the time when you're getting a bad response, it's because you asked a bad question or you phrased your command in the wrong way.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Like you're having a conversation. You're drilling in. You're drilling into, you're drilling down to what you want and or need. And you understand you're talking to an entity that knows everything almost. Not recent stuff, but but it has so much knowledge, and you have to kind of steer it. I think one of the things that really it speaks to two things here. I think it speaks to that a little bit, like the custom instructions. Now, if you have Pro or Premium or whatever you call it, you get these custom instructions now. Where there's two fields. What would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? And how would you like ChatGPT to respond? Those have really been helpful, I think, in the context of being able to give it things related to my business and who I am, my style of writing, how I want you to respond in these different scenarios has been really, really helpful as well. And also it speaks to your personality. I love that because you want to talk to somebody. I think it's funny that you're talking to you want yours to be argumentative. But for me, you know what I want? Humor. So I have probably the most ridiculous bot because it knows that I like to have a little bit, some light humor, sprinkle of humor, because you got to dial it back again, right? Because it will go all in on humor. And everything is writing for you and the responses. And I actually had to dial that back a little bit. I'm like, maybe just a little bit. But there's so many those type of tools as well. I think by developing your prompts in that way, asking those questions, that's powerful. Because that really struck me because I'm like, yeah, I should ask it more questions. I think that's, starting with the questions. I think that's a really great tip. But yeah, I mean, do you use custom instructions? Have you found that to be really useful?
Yeah, so I don't know. I've never used that one. So that's the thing is that there's so many features. I'm so busy programming in other ways.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like I was working on something for someone today and I was like, I want to do this in the simplest way possible. So I don't use the custom instructions and I don't use Code Interpreter, which they changed the name on it.
Yeah.
I've played with it sometimes, but it's often I'm like, I want to keep it simple for someone I'm teaching.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this could be, I just haven't dove into that because there's always more things I can do. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can do this in 2 prompts or 3 prompts and keep it from getting drift. So a lot of what I do, because it's specific, I'm always thinking about teaching someone else. So when I do my own thing, some of the things I do, I could never teach. They're so complicated and so overwhelming that people would see, like when I'm presetting it. So for example, when I was editing my book, I set it to be me so that it would edit in my style. That's when it got argumentative because it's me fighting me. Because I always do this. When I'm writing a book, I'll just do too many rewrites during the editing phase. And that's what it was doing. And so I'm like, stop doing what I normally do. But you can give it a skill chain, which means you can say web development / and below that is PHP. Below that is Ajax or Ajax, how we're supposed to say it. Below that is WordPress or whatever. So you can do that to give it a skill chain of what it's good at in order of best to worst. which most people don't know. And there's a whole world of skill chain development. And you can also give it a very specific personality. You can give it an ocean personality type, which stands for openness. Oh, I can never remember all the letters. I remember N is for neuroticism. In each category, there's like 7 or 8 numbers. So a person will have like a 50 different variables in their score. Unlike INTP, Myers-Briggs just gives you 4 letters. This one gives you like a really complex. So you can go down a rabbit hole that's so technical and complicated that, again, it's like, well, my job is not to distract people with a 1% use case, right? Where you can make it really smart or be a specific person. Like I can turn it into you to the point where like you start getting worried because it sounds too much like you.
Yeah.
I did that to my friend. You could only tell because it had said it would phrase slightly different than the way he does, but it was like, it's really talking like me. So it could do really impressive things. And if you understand why it's doing it, it's not that scary, but there's some amazing stuff it can do that I kind of go down that rabbit hole. But I haven't played with custom instructions. I haven't played with when they changed the name of Code Interpreter. I forget the new name of it. I saw it today at a different name. I was like, that's confusing.
I saw it too. It's advanced data analysis now.
There's a chance that what that really is ChatGPT 4.5. I think that's what's actually happening there. So
I actually had to process a spreadsheet and just kind of you have an analysis that we had to export from somewhere, and I'm like, analyze this data or just recap this data for me. You know, it does so many amazing things. But I think the biggest message from you and what I'm boiling this all down to is keep it simple, because you can go down these rabbit holes and you know, I use it so much and I've played around with. I'm kind of like you. I play around with everything, and you know, just try it, dig in, right? Don't be afraid of it. If I'm going to kind of end this conversation because I feel like I could talk for hours more. We're already beyond my average. So we need to continue this conversation at some point. I have a feeling you should come back at least once or twice more. But if somebody wants to learn more about what you're doing, and if they want help from you, they want, you know, instruction and to get on the train and learn more about ChatGPT, how can they? Where do they find you on the World Wide Web? Where you hang out?
Yeah, if you just Google "serve no master," every result is me. It's either my videos or my podcast or one of my books. If you go to servemaster.com/AI, that's my AI page where you can see about my book, ChatGPT Profits, which is on Amazon and every other bookstore. The audiobook is amazing. I have an amazing narrator who does a great voice for ChatGPT.
Oh, cool.
And really excited by that. And you can really see all the things I'm doing, see the courses that I'm building, and a lot of the tools that I'm using. And it's really the best place to find me. It's just that. And you can find me on any social media, but the best place is enter your email address on my website and then email me back because I check it all personally. And I'll email you. That's the best way to talk to me. Nice.
Well, thank you for time, Jonathan, and sharing all your story and all your knowledge about ChatGPT and AI. Thank you very much. And till next time.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. If you want to comment on this episode's page, provide me with requests on topics for future episodes, or inquire about being a guest, please find your way to thebuilders.fm. You can contact me there or add a comment under these show notes. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.